Hello everyone. So in this video I want to do a quick first impression and maybe some test footage for the a camera slider that I just recently bought, which is the Neewer 31-inch slider system. So this slider actually came with something very interesting. It's a flywheel that you can have very fine, smooth movement when you are rotating the flywheel. And it's a belt-driven system, so it's gonna have a belt that's going in between the tracks, and that's a belt that's actually driving the slider, moving left and right. So the reason I want to do this like a first impression is because I last week I bought another camera slider, which is a supposedly a automated camera slider that's actually also wireless. It's made by a company called GVM, great video maker or something like that. That slider actually has given me nothing but problems. So I actually returned that slider and I bought this one. The reason I bought this one is because this is the cheapest slider system that actually features a counterweight on one side of the slider. There is another camera slider system that's been selling for about $200. Essentially, I'm pretty sure it's the exact same system. They only changed the color scheme a little bit to suit different aftermarket manufacturers. So, and this one is actually made by Neewer, which is a fairly established video and camera accessory manufacturer, or shall I say, they rebrand a lot of products for sale in the United States. And this is one of the products that they have just recently launched. So I'm pretty sure it's a rebrand of another of the other slider that that's being also selling on Amazon. So I'll post the link on both sliders for you guys down below, so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. But I want to show you guys how well the slider is constructed in terms of the construction, in terms of the build quality of the slider, whether it's worth the $150 that you're going to be investing on. Personally, I think right off the bat, this is a great slider, a counterweight slider for $150. And you can certainly get a slider, a very entry-level slider for maybe $50 to start with. But those kind of sliders lacks a counterweight. So when you're actually moving around the camera, you don't have a smooth action. This one, because of the counterweight, you can have a very fluid action when you're actually just panning the camera. As you can see, the flywheel does the trick of accelerating and deaccelerating for you when you're using the plate or when you're actually just moving the plate. You also have the option of using this little rotating flywheel by grabbing the handle on the top and then just rotate it at a constant speed, okay? Or you can just press on the counterweight wheel and then just rotate it like this. Sometimes it's easier to rotate like this instead of grabbing the little handle over here, personally for me. So the slider also features 4 of those angle adjustable legs right over here. So if you loosen the little knob on the side, you can adjust the angle for the slider to be used on a flat surface or on a ground. So right over here, there's actually a little spirit level. So you can also level up the slider somehow with this little spirit level. However, it doesn't come with a ball head, by the way. This ball head is a Manfrotto entry-level ball head. The model number is 496RC2. This is my favorite little tiny ball head for use with my mirrorless cameras. Right over here, I have a Sony A7 III that I use for video that can be super quickly mounted onto this camera slider system. And believe it or not, I actually just got this slider today. It's very easy to set up and use because right now I'm already very familiar with all the features of the slider. So it's a very easy system to use and get started with compared to the wireless system that I actually bought last week that actually was very, very hard to use. So I think in terms of value, I definitely personally prefer this kind of slider with a flywheel compared to the cheaper version and compared to the wireless mechanical automated version for majority of my shooting style. Okay, so a couple of things I want to bring out. When you first buy this slider, it actually comes totally disassembled. The flywheel actually comes disassembled. So I'll show you guys. Over here is the flywheel. So it comes in different parts. I want to show you how you're gonna assemble this flywheel really quickly. And you actually need a few tools because it doesn't come with the it doesn't, oh, actually, never mind. I think it did come with the tools. I just didn't take it out of the carrying case over there, okay? So the flywheel is over here. It's actually pretty heavy. They advertise it as a stainless steel wheel, but I'm pretty sure it's just chrome-plated metal or steel. So in terms of maintenance, I would just apply a very thin layer of some sort of anti-rust or like a grease on the wheel so it doesn't rust, especially if you use it a lot outdoors in moist environment. And so basically come with this little red knob. You just align the wheel and put it on the end where the belt driven system is, and then you just close this little knob and then the flywheel is fully attached. You can use the slider without the flywheel, and it's much less smooth. You can feel that when you're moving it, there are some resistance in the belt system, so it makes it less smooth. Another option is to remove the whole belt system completely, which there's a little red knob over here. Right here, you can just loosen it and completely remove the belt system, which actually gives you more usable space on the slider. With the flywheel, the most usable space is only about, I think I measured at 22 and a half inch. That's the maximum sliding space you're gonna have with this flywheel. Because when you go over here, it actually stops right here. And when you go to the other side, it actually also stops on the other side right over here. Show you guys. So right here. So it's being stopped by those two mechanisms that actually holds the belt system over there, okay? So keep that in mind. The usable distance is only 22.5 from center to center on the other side. And those are the tools that came with the slider. So it gives you two extra little rubber feet for the bottom part, and two different sides of the hex wrench. So the large hex wrench is actually used to install the top part of the slider, the handle. So this is, if you put it in here, I'm going to unscrew it for you guys so you can take a look. It's actually a few parts that came disassembled with the slider. So over here you have the little knob handle over there, and you have a little spacer in here and the bolt. So this is a three-piece system. You basically put it there and secure it so the knob doesn't doesn't fly out when you actually install it on the flywheel. You can also use the flywheel just without the knob. Actually, it works perfectly fine because the motion is actually very smooth. Let you guys see. See, it's a very smooth movement, and in terms of like the stop motion, it's very, very nice, very, very smooth. Okay, if you actually just push on the plate to play around with the slider. Again, multiple options for you to actually customize and choose the best, I guess, the best way to use the flywheel as you wish. Okay, so again, all those parts actually comes disassembled. Actually, when I first received the slider, the flying wheel was just dangling, like was just free roaming inside the case. So I don't think they packaged it well when they actually shipped the slider to me. But again, it's a very entry-level slider, and this is a little yellow case that came with the slider. It doesn't even have the Neewer branding, but this is the case. Okay, open up the case. There is no padding, minimal amount of padding on both sides, but but you have to be really careful of where you're gonna put the slider. I would suggest actually just put the slider in a different bag to protect the rest of the system. The system that I'm using to actually mount the slider is the Sachtler Ace M video head. So this is a fluid head. So basically I have some basic motions for positioning the slider. I can turn it around and then I can position it at certain angles. Let's see. So right over here, and then lock it. It is actually balanced with the camera on the slider. So when I balance it, when I put it at a position, it doesn't move around. But right now I don't have the camera on there, so it's a little unbalanced. That's why it's kind of rotating a little bit. But let's see. What else I want to mention about this slider? The bottom plate of the slider, show you guys really quick. So the bottom plate, and again I'm gonna lock it, is it have a few different holes to mount all different kinds of screws. So regardless what kind of mounting screw size you have for your tripod or your ball head or the tripod head, you should be able to mount it onto the bottom plate over there. But just really make sure that the slider is very stable and well balanced in your head, because you most definitely don't want the whole system to fall down when you finish balancing them and have your very expensive camera on the slider moving around. So do make sure to secure everything very nice and tightly before you start shooting, okay? And the slider plate itself have a locking system over here. So if you're not using it, or if you just put it in the bag, just simply lock it and it doesn't move around. There's a few design problems with the slider. So first being the leg on the side with the flywheel. You can't really close it with the flywheel on there. So the quickest way, of course, is to just unscrew it and pack it like that, and then put it on, put back the flywheel if you're not using it on the ground, okay? So that way it doesn't really, the legs doesn't really bump into stuff when you're actually shooting, okay? So with this side over here, it's really easy to just pack it aside and tuck it away, so when you're not using it again, you can save some space and have a more cleaning, workable area on the slider. All right, so there is actually one more thing I want to talk to you guys about this slider before I start showing you guys footages of how the slider works and it is in action. So that is, the slider actually shipped to me with all the bolts of the knob like super dry. So all I did was any of those bolts that I can remove, any of those nuts that I can remove, I just removed all of those, and I actually lubricated the contact area with some grease. Like, I used bicycle grease, but you can use other kind of grease as necessary, but I actually lubricated all those areas because I suspect those bolts are actually steel bolts and they're gonna rust in no time, even though most of the other parts of the slider is made with aluminum, which is not gonna easily rust, and of course the tube is carbon fiber. So that is one thing I want to talk to you guys about. The flywheel, I actually lubricated the bolts in there as well. I lubricated this part, so when it actually moves around, it doesn't make any squeaking sound. When I first bought it, I put it together because it was so dry, it's just making a really loud, like horrible sound when you're trying to rotate this wheel. And now, as you can see, with it lubricated with the grease inside, it's not making any noise at all. So super quiet. Okay, so, and I find this slider most helpful, basically level. You have the option to tilt it by putting the slider plate on the side and then just rotate it around. I tried it and I don't think it's stable enough, at least for my setup. So I wouldn't recommend that kind of an action, especially on a fairly light load video tripod. If you have a very heavy, well-built, large video tripod, it's fine to do those. You have the option to actually just turn it around and then have it at a very steep angle. But the problem with this slider is you don't have a drag control. So the motion is very fluid, but you can't really control how heavy you rotate this wheel, if you know what I mean. So there's no drag control. You only are presented with this one option, okay? So the speed is entirely controlled by your movement. And if you want it to be slow, you move really slow. You want it to be fast, you move really fast. It just gives you a more fluid motion. That's the reason if you actually tilt this slider, of course, first you have to make sure it's really secure. And then when you tilt it, the flywheel actually flies off. It drops down like really quickly. So you have to be really careful when you are doing those kind of shots. Like make sure your camera is really secured, okay? So here we go. I'm gonna record and then I'm gonna slide with my hand over here. Stop. Okay, so of course I can adjust the camera angle right over here on my ball head fairly easily. So that's why it's really nice to have a ball head. And this time around I'm gonna rotate using the wheel, and then we're gonna take a sample footage. So there you have it. With a 22.5-inch sliding action, it's still enough to do most of the job fairly well. Unless you need to slide for a really long distance, maybe then you should consider a much longer slider with a flywheel control. But for the job that I'm doing right now, it's perfectly fine. So instead of tilting the ball head, I can also just tilt my video head a little bit and try to find an angle that I like. And then we can do another sliding action with everything locked. Okay, so over here I'm gonna slide again. And this time at a fairly fast speed. Halfway through. So there you have it. And let's see what other motion we can do. Just for the fun of it, I'm gonna actually rotate the slider sideways and show you guys how it's gonna work at an angle. I don't recommend it. I'm gonna show you guys why I don't recommend it, and then you would understand, okay? But it's doable. So basically, we're gonna remove the plate and then just switch it around. Of course, it's better to have at least much less weight. The less weight, the better. Just gonna quickly remove the flywheel, reduce some weight, and then we can take the slider off. And on the back, I'm gonna rotate the plate 90 degrees. Like so. Actually gonna rotate it this way. So you always want to have the, I don't know, we can give it a try, have the flywheel at the bottom, and I want to see how it turns out with the flywheel at the bottom of the plate. Okay, I just set up everything at the bottom of, I just set up the flywheel at the bottom, and I'm gonna start rotating the flywheel to bring the camera back up there with the recording going on in my Sony camera. And let's give it a try. Let's see what the effect is. And I'm gonna give you guys my thoughts. So again, as you can see, if you mount it on the side, there is actually a lateral movement, which is gonna make this video look kind of funny because it's just not that secure mounted on the tripod. It's that's why also the reason I don't really like this kind of a thing, this kind of a setup. So next, because it was moving a lot, I'm gonna just drop it down with my hand, okay? Just control it with my hand and doing a downward motion. Again, it's really hard to control the speed as well with such a heavy camera. So it's really hard to control. That's all I can tell you. That's why I don't recommend having this kind of an angle for this kind of a slider. It might, in this situation, the automatic or the automated slider might work better in this kind of situation with the motor actually was able to fix a plate onto the camera and just slowly bring it back up and bring it down. So again, for my kind of shoot, which I'm doing probably at most of the time a horizontal panning, so it really doesn't apply to me. If you guys are looking for that kind of a special angle panning, you might want to look at automated sliders. For my purpose, the horizontal is fine. And also remember to find the most secure place to mount on your video head, because apparently if I mounted 90 degrees against the plate, it gives a lot of play. So that's also not good. Also another reason I wouldn't recommend mounting that way. Let's see. So take it off. And I'm going to actually switch it back to the original optimized position for the horizontal shooting. So again, I'm just turning it. Make sure it uses the maximum amount of the plate area, because that's the most secure way to mount it on your tripod. Okay. And you really need to have a sturdy tripod. Like this one, it looks sturdy, but it's an entry level that costs around $700. And I can tell you with all those weight, it's not cutting it. It still have small movements, but it's doable. So also keep that in mind. You actually need to invest in a very sturdy, very good quality fluid head and a tripod set for this kind of setup, really. Okay. So as you can see, it's very easy to set it up and very easy to take it down. Basically just one screw to take it off the plate, or I can even just leave the plate over there, and it's really quick and easy to set it on the desk or on the flat surface on the ground as well, and just put it back like when you're finished. So this slider is really useful and really handy. You can also just quickly take the flywheel off, and if you prefer to use this manually, just do a small slide, that's fine. It's not as smooth with the flywheel, without the flywheel, but it's still able to do it. So there you have it. This is the $150 Neewer counterweight flywheel slider, whatever how you call it. But I think the most important part that differentiates this slider and other sliders at this price range is the smooth action of the counterweight. It really makes the motion a lot more fluid, a lot more smooth compared to the manual sliders that doesn't have a belt and a counterweight. Like those sliders, If you are a very experienced pro, you might be able to do it. But if you're like me, which I'm still very new at learning all those video stuff, so I find this kind of slider actually is a better upgrade compared to the manual sliders. And especially at the price of $150, you just can't beat it. Great for product reviews, great for wedding footages as well. If you're shooting couples, just set this up and do some quick slides. It's gonna look way better compared to just have your camera at a fixed angle and then just turning this way. It's way better. It looks way more professional with a sliding action. Okay, so that is just my opinion. If you guys have any questions about this slider, the Neewer 31-inch with a 22.5-inch usable area camera slider, do ask me in the comments section down below. Again, I think this is a fairly new product, but similar products with different brand names has been on the market for a while. This one is just a lot cheaper compared to the competitor at $150. Okay, I'll post a link down below on where to buy this slider, as well as the slider that I think that this slider is actually copying, and also a few other options for better built sliders, which is going to cost you at least $600–700. So compare $600–700 slider and this one, it's definitely a great value. Thank you again for watching. If you found this video helpful, please do hit the like button or subscribe, and I should have more similar content like this coming out for you guys. Okay, so thanks again and take care.